Round 4 of the Vegas tournament. I'm actually back at home now, but still recording recaps so you can get to all the games. And here I finally found my opponent's online account, and I saw that they sometimes play a modern defense, sometimes they play a Vienna, so I prep against both of them. But since my opponent is a chess teacher, I guess he has multiple different lines that he looks at because he played something completely different than his online account. Maybe it was intentional that he, hides his prep, but very professional. He takes, and he plays c5, which is not something that I have seen much in the Vienna. Coincidentally, I actually played a training game in this line this past week, but I didn't know the theory, so I played some trash move, bishop a3, in the training game, not over the board, trying to maybe counteract this bishop, but it's queen h5, and it's already really tough for white to figure out what to do. So I knew that this time the right move was bishop b5 check, and after knight to c6, well, the right thing to do is actually have plans of queen g3, and again, that queen g3 is actually a better way to counteract this dark square bishop, because it's how does this dark square bishop ever leave if the g7 pawn is hanging? So you have to deal with that. It takes a little bit longer to develop and get castled for black. So that's why queen g3 is the right idea here. And not only that, queen g3 paired with d3 instead of d4, because d3 opens up the dark square bishop. It also helps to counteract the light square bishop of black. Throw all that out the window, because in this position I rushed it and I played d4. I mean, up to this point we played 7 moves, and my opponent literally had my opponent had an hour and 34 minutes. That means that he had basically made all these moves super fast, hour and 33 minutes, excuse me, but he was basically pre-moving all of his moves. So I felt pressure for no reason whatsoever, even though I had an hour and 20 minutes on my clock still. I just felt pressure to move and keep up with him, because I didn't want to have this huge time deficit out of the opening. But it's classical chess. There's so much time. I don't know why I psychologically got psyched out, but I did. I played d4, because in a lot of other Vienna lines, d4 is fine, but that's the whole point of c5, is to discourage it. So what I realized is that d4 just loses the pawn. He takes, and at this point I saw, wait, queen h5 and queen h4 are both very annoying issues. And that's a lot of times in the Vienna game, in the Vienna Gambit, you need to take care of your dark square diagonals. In this case, it's weak on both sides, and I realized that I cannot take back. If I take back queen h4, I lose my bishop and it's game over. So instead, what I do is I take the knight, and he takes back. I play knight to e2, giving up another pawn temporarily so that I can castle and get to safety. If I allow, for example, even if I take here, I allow queen h4, and it just doesn't matter how I block. Black's going to trade queens off while being up a pawn, and my pawn structure is going to be weak. Or even if I don't trade pawns off, even if I go queen f2 so that you can't go here, well, it's still really bad, because this bishop comes through and everything is just falling apart. I can't block with the bishop. I have to move king f1, and this is just I'm getting slaughtered, right? This is just disaster. So that's why I decided to castle. Just get to safety first. Get to safety, and then I'm going to win the pawn back. After he castles, I take it with the queen, and he brings his queen out to e7. Now, this is I wasn't really sure what to do in this position, and I didn't quite understand black's resources. Their bishop pair is super strong. I played bishop f4, which does nothing to stop bishop a6, which I did not even see. This is the strongest move. I mean, look at this bishop pair just staring at everything. How do I even protect this knight? It's really no convenient way. It's truly just not very convenient at all. I played rook to f to e1, still trying to blitz some moves out. I literally played rook e1 in 1 minute. So maybe a little bit of the wear and tear of the tournament was starting to get to me, because I completely overlooked bishop b4. But honestly, there wasn't a grid resource anyway. If I hadn't played rook f to e1 and I played queen to d2, it's still just it's not a good position. Bishop b4 still works, and everything is just getting like so inactive. C3. Okay, well, bishop takes E2 anyway, and like I deflect and get lose a pawn. Like it's very difficult anyway. So basically, terrible position. I go down in exchange. At least I get a pawn for the exchange. He plays bishop b7 first. I didn't even see this. And I just played queen b5. I thought maybe queen a4 was better, but I was trying to look for counterplay. And maybe after like, maybe after takes and like rook b8 or something, maybe there'd be some ideas with e6. It doesn't even work, but just I'm looking for something where I could set pieces for tactics in the future. He just doesn't fall into anything. He just says, all right, rook a to c8. I'm got an open file. He's playing very, very solidly. And here I play knight to d4. Knight to d4 serves two purposes. I was like, well, I want to try and get this bishop to be as inactive as possible. And also I'm defending the c2 pawn. Here he tries to trade off queens. I didn't really see a good option. Couldn't find other options. Like if I wanted to take, well, my bishop's hanging and what is my queen doing, right? Like this is just not really ideal at all. So I just traded queens off. Trades queens off the board, down in exchange, still trying to find a way forward. And in this moment, I realized, it's not the end of the world. Like I could have some counterplay because look at this. Dark square, dark square. This bishop, dark square diagonal. Okay, why not rip everything open and try and create a passed pawn? For example, if you take this, that can't be good. I mean, not only is the bishop forking, but the knight could fork. So I could probably win an exchange back with either knight takes or bishop here. Probably knight takes was my plan, although something is really not liking this. The engine does not like it. Oh, because of rook e8. So okay, not knight takes. It was probably going to be bishop d6 is probably what I was thinking about, and then there's no rook e8 pending my rook. So I think after rook c4, I was thinking about taking, and if you take, then we're like totally equal. I mean, I go take with check, we're fine. And if you do wanted to take, apparently, okay, so I overlooked this. If you take the knight instead, I just go back. But I'm still going to pick up a pawn. Well, maybe not. King f7. Okay. Kind of a mess, but honestly, I would be much, much happier just down a pawn instead of down an exchange. Yeah, that's why my opponent did not take on e6. He was like very clearly looking at a lot of options here. And honestly, this is like, he took a fair amount of time on this move. This is like his first real like big think of the game. And I meanwhile was in the restroom. So the restrooms were like a solid 2 or 3 minute walk away from the board we were playing on. And 3 minutes there doing my business, 3 minutes back. The entire time I was visualizing this position and I was like, oh, I got him. Like, there's so many moves that could be bad. Like, I really could figure out a way to swindle. Like, obviously, objectively, he's probably fine. But I was like, there's a lot of tricks here, a lot of counterplay. And I thought that if he had just played an innocent-looking move like rook e8, which he did play, I was like, oh, perfect. Like, then I can just push my pawn, and then I can put my bishop on d7, and I'll go win the rook. Either the rook will move and I'll promote, and they'll sacrifice it, or whatever. Keep in mind, I wasn't looking at the board. This was like my bathroom calculation. I turned my dark square bishop into a light square bishop in my head. So when I got back to the board and he played rook e8, I was like, yes! Then I looked at the board and I was like, no! I was like, no, why? Why did I mess this up? But it makes sense. Like, I can't fork on the dark squares and also hit the light square promotion square. So I still thought that e7 was the best move because instead of like liquidating down, at least I have an asset in the position. Like, black has to tie resources to that pawn, and the counterplay is alive and well. At some point, I would absolutely love to get a knight to one of these two squares, either d6 or c7, and fortunately, it's supported by this bishop as well. That way, I'm going to kick the rook out, win the rook for pawn, and we go there. But, he plays rook to c4, And understanding the fact that these two squares are the key squares, I was like, wow, he gave up the knight b5 square. So why don't I support my knight, because it's a very important piece, and sack a pawn? Because c3, if you sack the pawn that way, this did not happen, unfortunately, but knight b4, no, it's knight b5. I'm hitting the rook with tempo, and it doesn't matter where you move the rook, you're not stopping me from getting to c7. And if you want to sack the exchange, be my guest. You sack the exchange, and I got a pawn on e7. We're in business. Like I'm happy. Unfortunately, my opponent does not take on c3. He sees through this whole mess, and he just plays a6 because he's like, well, I'm taking away b5. And I was like, okay, fine. You take away b5. Well, there's another way to get to these two squares. Maybe not c7, but I could go this way to get to d6. And I really was trying to figure out a way, like, can I just sack my bishop? Like, is this good? The answer is no, as you see the eval bar just plummet. But basically the issue is that you can just take here, and I can't take back, because now that the rook is on the f file instead of blocked by a pawn, if I take, I lose. And yeah, so there's some back rank tricks there. My king was on h1 because that bishop check a lot earlier in the game. And yeah, so I realized, okay, that doesn't work. So what I have to do first is king g1, right? And I have king g1. I'm trying to fix my back rank weakness, and then I can sack my bishop, and I think I'm okay. But my opponent's like, well, I see your tricks. g6. And g6 is the beginning of even more counterplay. Instead of trying to get in with a knight immediately, now I play bishop g5. And the whole goal is to cut off the enemy king. Just imagine, like, I get bishop to f6 and I get a knight to h6. That's checkmate. Obviously, they can play h5 whenever they want, but it's still just trying to limit the king's activity. So that reason is why king g7 is played. And in this moment, I had a serious lack of continuity in my thinking. There were so many lines after king g7 that I was calculating with h6 and g5. So h6, obviously, I have a decision of which direction to go with the bishop. But if I go to the h4 square, g5, and all of a sudden my bishop is disconnected from my pawn. For some reason, when I was looking for candidate moves, I had already thought that the bishop was disconnected on h4 or g3. So I just discarded rook f1 entirely. But rook f1, and it's not so easy. Like, if they allow me to put the king back, or the king has to run, like, it's starting to come together with some more counterplay. Unfortunately, I didn't see this. I just overlooked it. I missed it, and I played rook to e3. Just at this point saying, well, I might as well try and hold on to the pawn. After h6, and I move back up, bishop c8, best move in a lot of these engine lines. And all of a sudden, like, bishop c8 is doing a great job controlling, like, all sorts of checks on the king, and it's a great diagonal. So after king to f2, rook to c7, threatening to win this pawn if anything ever happens, like g5 and the bishop moves away. I play rook to e5, and my opponent does indeed play g5. I move my bishop out of the way, and instead of winning this pawn, they make an interesting decision to win the c pawn instead. And because of this, I was like, okay, well, I'll take the d pawn. And after you take my pawn, I have one last chance. And that one last chance is bishop to e5 check. One last trap. Yes, it's a little bit of hope chess. But again, when you're losing, you have to try to find some counterplay. If you're in an equal position and you're playing hope chess, not good. If you're from a lost position, you got to create chaos, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do with some sort of discovery check. Because look, this is a check, and if I can get another check in, and then I'll win the rook, and we'll probably have some sort of, I'll sack a piece for it. That's fine. Like, then we're even material again, except I'm down a pawn, even pieces, and then I'm down a pawn instead of being down at the exchange. So of course, my one and only hope here was f6. Then what I can do is simply knight f5 check. You take, I take your rook. You have to either move your bishop or counterattack my bishop. And if we trade into a rook endgame where you're up one pawn, I'm probably going to be able to draw this. But my opponent, being the strong player that he is, he does not give me my fun. He just plays king h7. Very professional, just gets out of the way. And here I try anyway to play bishop f6. The rook moves. I have to move my rook, and I just get chased around. And at this point, he realizes he can trade material down, and he's going to be even more winning because I sacked another pawn or lost another pawn. And that's exactly what he does. Takes, and after I play h4, I just resign. The classic, I'm so mad. I play a move with 4 minutes left on my clock, realize that there really is no counterplay left, and I stop the clock and I shake his hand. So we actually analyzed this game after, and he did confirm basically every chance that I had any sort of tricks and traps. He saw through everything, and I just want to say congrats to him because he played a really, really strong game. Played very fast in the opening, got a little bit of psychological, advantage there with that speed, and I cracked under the pressure. Didn't think about the new position that I was playing at all, and he converted the opening advantage like a boss. So if you want to see the other rounds that I played in Vegas, I will be publishing rounds 5 through 7 daily, and then you can check out the other ones right over here. Happy learning, everyone.